It is time to reminisce on one of the biggest missed calls that have ever happened in the Stanley Cup Finals, but worked out for the St. Louis Blues. I'll tell you more about that coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked on Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Haley Taylor Simon talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues. Here, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'll be telling you about something that happened exactly 5 years ago today. One of the biggest missed calls in modern NHL history that happened in a Stanley Cup Final. What the Blues need to do during free agency, and of course, and the Blues select with the 16th overall draft pick. Drum roll, please. I'll tell you who it is coming up, so you have to stay tuned for that one. Before I dive deeper into today's episode, I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I hope everybody is having a happy Thursday. It is June 6th. Exactly 20 days from now, I will be flying out to Las Vegas for the NHL draft, covering it for you here on Locked On Blues. But 5 years ago today, something happened, and it was Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals between the St. Louis Blues and the Boston Bruins. But do you remember what happened in Game 5 that became kind of like a meme to me, at least, maybe to you? I think this whole fan base. It's a tweet that the Boston Bruins put out. So the Bruins put out, Noel Charged St. Louis scores, unbelievable. Now, that was one of the funniest plays that I think has ever happened. And listen, if it was on us, I would have been upset, obviously, right? But it was on us, the Bruins. But Bozak 100% tripped Achari. There is no doubt about it. Perron was able to score, and second goal of the night, by the way. So he gave the Blues a 2-0 lead. But the funniest part about it is I know that it got behind Rask, who was the Bruins goalie, but it also went off of Bruins defender at the time, Torrey Krug. So it was just like a sequence of events, and even just like, hearing all the analysts talk about it, and everybody's like, oh yeah, that should have been called. Even Bozak knew that should have been called. We know that. The refs didn't call it. And the refs, the thing is too, they had clear sight of the trip, but did not call it. I know what people say, in the finals especially, you don't call as many things because you want the play just to be continuous. And I get that. It should have been a tripping call. It should have been. I'm sorry, but it should have been. But for me, at least, it does crack me up a little bit because obviously being a Blues fan, obviously knowing that the Blues having a 3-2 lead in the series after that was actually insanity. Now, the Blues did lose that Game 6 back at home in St. Louis, and then obviously when they came back for Game 7, they won the whole thing. But who knows? What if the Bruins ended up winning that game? And I know the Blues were up 1-0 before the trip happened, but it could have changed the whole dynamic series. It's crazy how one play can seriously change everything. But I was thinking about that a lot today, how one play can change. And that series was such a physical series. But again, that tripping call was insane. Now, the final score of that game was 2-1, by the way. But again, what really changed the game, obviously, was that non-call. Even though, listen, it was a trip. I'm not making excuses. But I still believe, even if it was called, the Blues would have still won that game. But all of us here on Twitter are cracking up because it's like the funniest thing, a sequence of events. It's kind of like karma. I feel like the Bruins are one of those teams that disrespects so many other teams in the NHL, not just, their beef with the Maple Leafs, but they're just a disrespectful team, especially with Brad Marchand. And I feel like it was kind of like a taste of your own medicine type of thing. I'm all about playing fair and playing by the rules, but, the Bruins fans, after that was not called, if you remember, they were throwing things onto the ice. And the arena announcer had to go on and say, hey, stop throwing things onto the ice. And for me, I know that if this happened, opposite effect with the Blues, our fan base wouldn't do that. And that's the difference. But it also just got me thinking how insane that game was. I mean, who would have thought that Torrey Krug would have eventually been a St. Louis Blue? The fact that I went off of him, off of his skate, and then it went into the net behind Rask was insanity. Obviously Perron got credited with the goal. It was his shot. And whenever a puck goes off of an opposing player, they're not going to credit the opposing player for the goal, right? So it is funny to me. It just the whole sequence of events. So then I went on a little bit of a spiral, right? Because I was thinking like, okay, what other iconic moments do I remember from just that whole entire Cinderella story? Well, obviously, I remember the 11-game win streak that we had after being like one of the worst teams. Berube came in November for us as our interim head coach. And yeah, like the first month or so, a couple months, it was still rough. Like we still sucked. But then we went on to that 11-game win streak, and it was absolutely insanity what we did. I think about the hand pass a lot with the San Jose Sharks. And ever since, by the way, the Sharks did that with the hand pass, they have yet to be successful going to the playoffs or winning in the playoffs. So, again, karma. There is a lot that comes into my mind when it comes to just that a whole entire year. But I think the best part about winning the cup was having Brett Hull sing Gloria. If you don't remember him doing that at the parade, you need to go back and rewatch the tapes. That always cracks me up so much. I mean, he is the man, the myth, the legend, but seriously, the person that created such a dynamic in the city for hockey. And, I think back to all the guys that really shaped the St. Louis Blues, and Brett Hull, of course, is like one of the main faces, him, 100%. And here's another thing too. And I was thinking about this when I talked about Pat Maroon yesterday in yesterday's episode. I'm going down memory lane, right? Because this is what we do. It's 5 years for whatever reason. I don't know why 5 years seems to be more of like a milestone than anything. I mean, I guess like the 10-year anniversary is going to be special too, but 5 years is half a decade. You still have some of the same players on the team. It's something special, but it feels different this year, I think it feels different because a lot of the team that we once knew and loved is not the same. I mean, when you watch, Braden Shen during the cup run, did you ever think that he would be the captain of the St. Louis Blues? I kind of had a feeling that Ryan O'Reilly would be one day, considering the fact that he was it was natural, right? Obviously losing Pietrangelo sucked. I get it. It happens, right? But it was nice seeing him win a cup again with the Golden Knights. Don't like the Golden Knights, but I was, again, happy for him. Happy for Ivan, obviously. But when a guy like Chief, and I know I talk about this a lot, but when a guy like Chief, who we all truly did love, and we still love, gets fired, and you have a new coach in Bannister, it feels different. Not that it felt the same with Chief when we weren't doing well in the past couple of years, but you had that sense of, oh, he's the guy that got us to the finals. He's the guy that got us the cup. I believe in him. You had that sense of, you always could count on him. Now with a new coaching staff, things just feel a little bit different to me as a fan. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a positive thing. It's just, it feels different this year, We have Vladimir Tarasenko, who, again, I miss him so much. And I know a lot of you don't want him back, and I get it. I get it. I do, because I missed him. But I miss him from when he was playing with us, if that makes sense. Like, I miss him being here, playing years back. Happy that he's, a second opportunity to get another cup. That's awesome. But I think about that a lot too, is I latched onto certain players because they became like my favorite players. I think we all had players that were our favorites. I know a lot of you huge Vince Dunn fans. I get that a lot of you were Bozak fans. For me personally, it was Tarasenko and Pietrangelo. And that's why when, Alex won the cup with the Golden Knights last season, I was a little teary-eyed. I was a little emotional because nothing beats it when you win it the first time. Well, they say that. I don't know. We only won it once. So again, like I don't know, but nothing beats that feeling, I guess. And just hearing how proud he was of what he did with St. Louis because they did all these interviews with him and he kept on bringing us up. The broadcast kept on bringing us up and our cup went up. And I think that's really special. He was a part of an organization that got their first Stanley Cup, only being here a couple years, but got their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. So it's a pretty cool thing that he was with two teams that got their first cup ever, despite the fact that we almost had to wait 5 decades, but still. And then you have Tarasenko, who was in the same situation again, where the Florida Panthers are looking for their first ever cup win. And it just gets you thinking, about how special it was when they won it with us. And I don't think that feeling is going to go away. I think that, at the end of the day, reminiscing on that series, reminiscing on that whole entire season is forever a part of us here in St. Louis. And yesterday again, I'm talking a lot about yesterday with my Pat Maroon episode that just got me kind of like going down a rabbit hole. But when I first began doing this podcast almost a year ago, it was a couple days before we went Blues Day. And I never got to experience being able to talk about all of the feelings, all of the emotions of what actually took place during the series, what actually took place during that run. And for me, this is special because I miss it. I was always a Colton Parayko fan. So again, that was a comfort. Robert Thomas, that's a comfort. Jordan Binnington, that's a comfort. But again, there's players that we don't have here. Like I know Jake Allen. Some of you were probably like, oh, let's move on from him. I get it. I get it. But he was with us for so many years. And it's like so weird at having some of the guys that you really grew up with, right? Like Keith Tkachuk, I grew up with. And there's something comforting knowing how close he is with his organization still, right? Pronger, he actually tweeted me and Locked On Cardinals the other day. And I was like freaking out because like I'm like forever my captain. But there's just so many players that will always have a special place in my heart. And I think that there's just something really special about Perron, something really special about, Pietrangelo and my boy Vladimir Tarasenko, him too. Binnington, obviously. Thomas, O'Reilly, Pat Maroon, Bozak. Again, that entire team just has a really special place in my heart. So I know this was a little bit longer of a segment than usual, but I just wanted to reminisce a little bit. Is that so bad for a girl to reminisce on the team that won the first ever Stanley Cup in franchise history? Time to talk to you about Game Time, okay? Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Pick out specific games or matchups that you would love to attend. So if you want to see our Cardinals this season for the Lou, make sure you use Game Time, okay? So they have last-minute deals. They have 60% off of buying last-minute tickets. So literally you're saving big money, flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing. So you can see your like taxes and all that included to it and fees. You can see the views from your seats, which I think is pretty cool, and the lowest price guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So when it comes to free agency, this is what the Blues need to do. Be a little aggressive, especially when it comes to that defense. Now, a name that I mentioned previously is Brandon Montour. I know that he's with the Panthers right now. I know that they're, attempting to win a Stanley Cup, but he's not going to be as expensive as you think. And I'll tell you why. He is an older player. I feel like it's going to be a 1-year deal. I don't think that he's going to sign a multi-year contract. If he does, maybe 2 years at most. But he is a guy that theoretically would fit really well in the Blues' blue line. But during free agency, too, they need to be really careful with the money that they do spend and execute because the Blues cannot afford to lose all that money. And it's interesting, right? Because the Blues only have, certain players that I'm very concerned about. For the most part, I'm not really concerned about most things, right? And I want to make sure I give credit to where credit is due whenever I'm talking about another podcast or I'm talking about another person that I spoke to just because out of respect. But the Drop Hockey Show on Twitter, said to me, "Hey, Hale, the Blues were 12th to 13th in the league for team defense." And I did mention that previously, and I like that they reminded me and brought that up again because it's true. The Blues' defense wasn't as bad as we made it out. I personally think it's an awful defense, but that's my own opinion. But statistically, it's not. So again, thank you to the Drop Hockey Show for that. But I want to just be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to the defense and acquiring really skilled defensive players. Do I think that the Blues' defense is going to go through a whole, rebuild in a way? No. I think just the addition of a couple players could be very beneficial. But for my mind, when I think about a free agency player, at least, that could make a huge difference, it would be Brandon Montour. And again, I think that that's who specifically the Blues need to go after. But it would be helpful, at least. Another thing, too, is, again, from the VGK, it's Jonathan Marchessault. I think that he would be another really great player. Now, this is an interesting thing, right? Because there is a player that, well, listen, I respect him quite a bit. And by quite a bit, I mean a lot. I think phenomenal player, a multi-cup player, right? A forward. I do think, though, and I know what you're thinking, Hale, could the Blues afford this? Steven Stamkos, but again, I want the Blues to get younger, but again, that was just another name that popped into my head when I thought of like free agents. I'm like, But no, it is an interesting thing, right? To think of Steven Stamkos being a free agent. And it kind of, sucks. I feel badly in a way too, because it would be nice for him to but very aware it would be a possibility. Now, I know for us, when I think about a free agent, see Marcos, and do I think that they are going to not this season? Oh my God, I meant next season is Marco Scandella. And do I think that that is something that's concerning? Not yet. I think that next season, that's a path that we can go. But I think that Scandella can give you another good season. He's solid on defense. Like, he's not awful, so I don't need people complaining about him. But it is something that I do find interesting. Wait, hold on. Did I say next? Now I'm confusing myself. No, it is this season. My bad. He is expired. Why did I think that it was 2022 right now? I don't know if they're going to resign him. Maybe, maybe not. But I would like to see one more season of him. You know who's off the free agent? It's a guy that helped us win a Stanley Cup. It is Joel Edmondson. Now, I don't think they're going to bring him back, but, Pavelski is retiring, by the way. Matt Dumba will be a free agent. I like Matt Dumba a lot. So, again, he is somebody that I am a huge, huge, huge fan of. Shane Gostisbehere will be a free agent. Solid defenseman, a little bit older, but solid. He played really well for the Yotes, by the way, so not upset about that one. Then we have, see, I don't know if he's going to retire, but he might. Listen, Perron is a free agent. I know I just talked about him. I feel like he might retire. I'm not entirely sure what his plan is, obviously, but that makes me sad. Sucks. Tyler Myers, by the way, from Vancouver is one. But again, I think he's too old to help out the blue line. But it is interesting, right? When you look at all these different names and you're just like, oh, could this player help? Could this player not help? I don't know, right? It just is an interesting conversation that you and I can have. Obviously, a conversation we're going to be having for a while. Even TJ Brody right now, who's with the Leafs. Alec Martinez, one of the original Golden Knights. Obviously, Jacob Vanera for us. But again, I feel like they're going to do right by him. It is just so interesting. Oh, Bertuzzi. Oh, man. I miss her. Can we just bring back the St. Louis Blues from when we won the cup again? Is that too much for a girl to ask for? I don't know. All right, before I dive any deeper into the Blues' free agency what ifs, I just want to let you know about YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, like, all of that, show some love. It would be super, super, super helpful. So yeah, make sure to do that. And I will appreciate you. So, if the 16th overall pick, who will the Blues select? Well, that's a really great question because right now, with the whole Locked On Podcast Network, we're doing a mock draft. And with our mock draft, I have a little bit of beef with some of these people in my Locked On community. Listen, it's not because I don't think that this player won't fall. They're definitely not going to fall. But my favorite player from this draft, I'm just a little upset that somebody else had to select him, and again, it was the Ottawa Senators with Sam Dickinson. He is such a good defenseman, and I know that we're not going to get him, but it absolutely sucks knowing that we're not going to get him. So then it got me thinking, what are the St. Louis Blues going to do in the first round? We have the 16th overall pick, which isn't great, right? So that sucks, right? So here's a guy. And let me tell you about this guy because I did some research on him and I kind of like him. I was gonna do a drum effect for dramatic pause, but it didn't let me because the Wi-Fi isn't it. But it is Adam Ujic. He honestly is such a good defenseman. And he is somebody that I think has a lot of potential, right-handed defenseman. So obviously right away, I just think about the fact that we can put him in probably the first or second pair. It would be huge. But going into the draft, right, when people looked at defensemen, we see Sam Dickinson, you could say Adam would be one of the top defensemen in this draft, and he is without a doubt. Obviously, Dickinson has just been unreal with the London Knights, and that's been something. But at the same time, Adam Ujic obviously has a lot of potential, a lot of skills, right? He's a great skater, right? Which is something that we need on defense. Obviously, it's important for a guy to be a big body. He's a little bit lengthy, so not as, meaty, if that makes sense. A little bit more lean, but he is young. He still has time to fill out, obviously, and things like that. He plays at a really high speed too, which is really important for him as well. And he has a lot of good puck control and awareness. So I think another positive thing. And his mobility too is at an all-time high. So while I do think that Ujic, being injured at the World Juniors and out for the year, and he had a lot of stuff going on, right? I still think he will be fine. I think that he is somebody, honestly, that's going to adapt very well to the NHL. Looking at tapes of him too, watching him skate, you just see so much potential with him. And again, he is a player that I feel like would be NHL ready sooner than most people would think. And that's the thing about Adam Ujic is that he does have all of that potential, right? And the funny thing too is the Columbus Blue Jackets, I believe that they selected his brother David. I don't want to. When did he get selected? Because there were 6 overall? Hold on, they definitely selected his brother, right? David, because he did play, and I remember watching him. He played 43 games this past season. His brother. And he was, the 6th overall pick. So, again, it runs in the family. So, you see somebody that promising. I mean, David's 20 years old right now, which is something that, again, I'm telling you this because it's important. but obviously he played 4 games in the 2022-23 season, and then the last season he played 43 games. So 47 games total. That's something to me that shows me, hey, maybe this family is really, good when it comes to playing hockey. I mean, they drafted us in 2022, so that same at the season after the draft, essentially, he began playing. So what it says to me, obviously, I know brothers are different, but it does give me a lot of potential, a lot of hope for what is to come with the Ujic brothers. And again, defense, we need somebody on defense. And I said this to all the people in the Locked On Podcast Network that did our little mock draft. I said he's going to be NHL ready sooner than we think. And I think that's what the Blues need right now. I mean, obviously, I know we have to wait a little bit for Dvorsky, but with Ujic, I think we could see him a lot sooner. So again, let me know what you think. Do you like him? This is a name that I never mentioned before. So I'm really excited to talk more about players that I kind of didn't mention because they fell a little bit in mock drafts and all that. But I don't forget when I see a good defenseman, especially a guy that's in the upper blue line. Can't get that out of my head. All right, I will talk to you tomorrow for an Are We Feeling Blue Friday. And like always, let's go Blues.